Everything that could go wrong went wrong until Easter Sunday. A cyber attack took place on the EA that wiped out everything. And I went for a walk with the Lord on a beach and I said, I'm done. I said, just a South East London boy that wants to tell people about Jesus.
Was there a time when you're thinking, I'm sick and tired of God now, why are you doing this with me?
You know you've got a problem when you have two medics and it ends up with 24 in the room. They're all coming to have a look at something they've never seen. There's all kinds of fluid around all my son's organs. He's really sick. They tell us in no uncertain terms he's going to have a blood transfusion in the womb at 18 weeks. We're told there's a 5% chance of survival. Cambridge University want to study us. This happens to 1 or 2 women a year in the UK, so we're signing away our lives and all this is going on. And I was in my first year as the leader of Youth for Christ.
Tell us also then how you're managing that role. Yeah. Work needs to go on, family's important.
I said, guys and ladies, I need you to know there's a chance I might respond more emotionally. There's a chance my judgment won't be as good as normal. There's a chance my availability won't be the same. I think I look back and I'm embarrassed about lots of things, but I'm also kind to myself about the decisions I made at that time because I made the best with what I knew.
Is there been a time where you just had that moment of, this is really challenging now?
As the light shines brighter, so the attack of the darkness is greater. I sat on a rock watching see the waves lapping. And I'm like, Lord, I'm going to be quiet now because I can't be a monologue. This has to be a conversation. And in the stillness of my heart, an overwhelming sense. And I think we need to dig in, lean in and say, it was never easy for Jesus. So why would it be easy for us?
Gavin, welcome to Faith Off the Record. I'm so pleased you're here. Lots to talk about. You're a man who's well known from Evangelical Alliance, so I'd really like to go straight into it and welcome you firstly. How about you just go ahead and share us about who is Gavin Calver, what is Evangelical Alliance if someone doesn't even know about it, and just talk to us like your upbringing.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm a passionate person. I'm an optimistic person. I'm a hopeful person. I am absolutely committed to trying to help others people meet Jesus. I'm married to Anne. We've been married 24 years. Got 2 teenage kids, which is great. And the Evangelical Alliance is the oldest and largest unity organisation for the UK's evangelicals. It's 180 years old and it exists for 2 things. 1, we want to unite Christians in reaching those who don't know Jesus in every corner of the UK. And 2, we want to give a clear, effective, confident and united voice on behalf of the church within the corridors of power. So my job really, we're a membership organisation, thousands of churches, hundreds of organisations, tens of thousands of individual members. And my job really is to make sure we keep focused on the gospel, keep the good news central, but also to be an ambassador for the church in various areas and within the corridors of power, meeting some of the people you might see on the telly, but speaking up with a Christian voice.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's a fantastic introduction. And we're going to talk more about that. But I think before we do that, I really want to just dive into you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of Christians would know you and in the media and through churches. But I would like for people to understand who is Gavin Calver. You know, who is the man that people may see through these touch points. So give us insights of what's your upbringing like, you know, what was that like?
Yeah.
Tell us about your family. How did you come to the faith or really true repentance, being saved in the Christian life?
I mean, I was born into the Christian mafia. I'm the 8th generation of my family called Reverend, not Mr. It's mostly on my mum's side, not my dad's side. And it was great. I mean, it was very loved. It was all good. It was all fine. I grew up in South East London in Forest Hill, which is a lovely place to live and in relative terms and loved life really. But the Christian stuff was difficult for me because my parents were quite well-known Christian leaders at the time. And so there was a pressure for you to be a certain type of Christian. You couldn't just be a follower of Jesus. You had to be like full on and doing everything well and not sinning and all of this stuff. And so it didn't really work for me. And so I threw myself into football. I tried to become a footballer. I didn't get too far away, but I didn't get as close as I might like to think. But I threw myself into that. And at 14, I actually got banned from Sunday school. It was because of, let's say, regular bad behaviour. You know, every Sunday morning I would ask to make my youth workers' day a nightmare. And every week the Lord would answer that prayer. But it got to the point where I was banned for 6 months, which meant I couldn't even be made to go. My mum and dad would make me go to church, but you couldn't go because you were banned. And what's interesting is for 4.5 years, I left the church, no interest at all. Then when I was 17, my mum and dad moved to America. And for about 9 months, I messed about in a few ways and tried to work out what's this all about, what's happening. And the day after my 18th birthday party, I sat on a park bench in Mayo Park in Forest Hill, South London, surrendered my life to Jesus on my own. Now, here's the thing. Till this point, Jesus was an auntie figure in my life. Someone I knew existed but didn't like hanging out with. But at this point, it was like, hang on, nothing else really works. Nothing else fills the hole in my heart. Nothing else makes sense of life. And so I sat on a park bench all on my own, surrendered my life to Jesus, but then I prayed a much more dangerous prayer too. I said to the Lord, I will go wherever, whenever, and into whatever you have for me. And that's led to adventures, but also led to an inverted bucket list. Instead of doing what the dreams might have been for my own life, asking the Lord, what do you have for me? So it's been quite an adventure, and that was 27 years ago.
So let's unpack that.
Yeah.
That's a great story to start with, which is your background. You know, your parents are well-known Christian leaders. What caused you to sit on that park bench? You know, what was it that you was really looking for? Was it a gap? Was it something that's caused in your life to say, I can't take this no more. I need to look to a God and Jesus, because you know Jesus as from your background.
Yeah.
What was that cause? What was the gap that was missing for you to kind of get into that position?
I'm an all or nothing person.
Okay.
I don't do anything by halves, right? So if you see me supporting my football team on the terraces, or you see me preaching the gospel, right, you'll say there's a wholehearted character. Yeah. You know, that's who I am. And I never doubted the existence of Jesus. I don't want to sound flippant. I've seen people get prayed for and legs grow or get out of wheelchairs. I've seen all kinds of things that I could never doubt the existence of the Lord. The question for me was, do I want to give the Lord every ounce of my being, every cell in my brain, every moment of my day, it's all or nothing. Do I want to go all in with Jesus? So what happened to me was, after wrestling a bit, after pushing boundaries a bit, after knocking on other doors a bit, you realise, actually, no, yes, this is it. And actually, through messing up in some other ways, it pointed me that way. And I think for me, I was always going to be all or nothing. And I don't really understand half-hearted Christianity, because you get the worst of both worlds. But actually, all in for Jesus changes everything. And so for me, it was a culmination of that. And also, like most young people, I was desperate not to turn into my parents. And part of that, when you come from a faith background, part of that sometimes plays a part in there. And I had to find myself. So everything I got banned for at Sunday school, being difficult, going against the status quo, saying things others wouldn't say, being prepared to be distinct, being a bit awkward and unredeemed, that gets you banned from church. Redeemed, that makes you quite a good leader of the Evangelical Alliance, you know, taking on some of the things in culture that need taking on. And so I think some of it also was a process for me, having to work that out.
Right. That's insightful, because you get two ends of the spectrum. Ones who knows about faith, don't then have an encounter. One that has all the learning and education, unchristian, find encounter. And then for someone like yourself, you're either born as pastors' leaders and pastors' children, and then automatic adoption into the faith. So where you're coming from, which is, I knew about the faith, wasn't 100% in, decided to come 100% in, and that's where started your real journey, so to speak.
Definitely.
So what did life look like then at that moment post? You've surrendered, you're 100% all in. What happens from there?
Yeah. I mean, I became a crazy evangelist, right? Because some people are nurtured into faith and some people are salvaged into faith. I actually had the experience of both. So some people are nurtured. They've always been a Christian home, that kind of thing. And that's great. It can sometimes lead to over familiarity, though. You know, in Nazareth, who's that? It's just Mary and Joseph's son. No, some people are nurtured, but I was nurtured in the faith, but then salvaged for Jesus. So I know what it is to live away from Jesus. Now, I don't meet that many evangelists that have always been nurtured and haven't known what it is that they're saved from. So I know exactly what the alternative was. So I was on fire. I was just telling anyone about Jesus. I was up for all kinds of things. What was interesting is, because of my background, I was never a baby Christian. So, you know, people come to faith, you've got to do all these discipleship, and that's really important. I'd kind of done a load of that before. Right. So, I knew the stories and I knew the texts and I knew so I didn't have that bit. So once it was just, are you fully in or not? And then within 9 months, I was at Bible college, because I knew when I prayed, I knew actually the Lord's calling me into ministry. The Lord's calling me that way. That's not better or worse than anything else, but that was his plan for my life. So I turned down my university place at Nottingham University to do sports science, and instead ended up at the London Bible College studying for ministry. Met my wife there, as you do, you know, bridal college for a reason. Yep. And met my wife there, as you do. And then from there, life's just been a case of doing, Lord, what have you got next? And there were various things I didn't want to do, and I've ended up doing most of them, because areas of ministry my parents were involved in, I've ended up in similar ones. Right. So I went to work for Youth for Christ for 14 years. Well, my dad ran Youth for Christ, so did I, you know. And I chaired Spring Harvest for a while. Well, who started Spring Harvest? My old man. And I've had to be subservient to the fact, actually, there's something in my DNA that you step into. And now I lead the Evangelical Alliance. Well, two of the previous leaders of that are my dad and my grandfather. My mum's dad led the EA at the time that he started Tear Fund when he was the leader of the EA. So you're kind of like, I gave up fighting and I said, Lord, what have you got for me? And the real common thread in ever since that park bench is this, that I am giving my life to share hope and good news with others, that they might also encounter Jesus.
So good. That's amazing. And I think that's where I've seen we have a lot of on fire, which is fantastic. But then it's how do we take this into continuation with the fire? So what I want to understand then from your perspective, Gavin, which is you've now enrolled into Bible college, you're pursuing and you're meeting your wife. Where are you in this journey? Which is, are you still refining your calling? Are you knowing that, right, I'm going to be someone, continue the legacy of my parents and family? Are you thinking about just going itinerant ministry? So explain in terms of how are you able to decipher the calling? How do you hear from the Lord? And how do you crystallize that to know that this is the plan I'm going to go on?
Now, if you look at my CV, right, now I don't really think I have a career. I have a calling. But were you to look at my CV, you'd say, oh, that all makes sense. And there's a trajectory to this and this. It's never been like that. When I became a Christian, it wasn't just about choosing life with Jesus. It was choosing to die with Jesus. So I'm going to put down my dreams, my agenda, my hopes, and say, Lord, would you grow in me your dreams, your agenda, your hopes for my life? So the first couple of years at Bible college, it was just one step in front of the other. I was soaking up learning. I was also trying to do my best to work out what it means to live as a Christian in this environment, and how does my evangelistic stuff work with being at a Bible college, which can be like a Christian open prison, you know, where you're stuck around Christians all the time, but you're all about the lost. So I think some of that needed working out. But then what actually happened was, when it came to Youth for Christ, because I wasn't really sure what I'd do after Bible college, someone came after me from Youth for Christ, not quite headhunting, let's not quite put it that way, but someone came after me feeling that they needed to talk to me about an opportunity. And actually in that moment it became, well, Lord, is this? So is this for me? So it wasn't, I didn't suddenly think my blueprint is, boom, I'm going to look for a job. I've never really looked for a job. It's not really been like that. A conversation happened, and through that conversation, I felt the Lord leading me. And then I've tended to have a rule throughout the years, outside confirmation that the Lord's speaking to you.
Wow.
Not as a fleece, not I won't do it if you don't, but Lord, this is a big decision. Any chance you can help me out? And someone got in touch with me who's prayed for me all my life and said, I really think the Lord's calling you to be obedient. I really think the Lord's saying it's a yes to that which you're thinking about. Didn't know what it was I was thinking about. And I really think the Lord's saying, go do it and put down your pride and crack on. That was what I needed. And actually, most hinge moments since, there's been some kind of outside confirmation, whether it's pre-decision or during. And I think that's important. And if that comes unsolicited, as it often has for me, great. But if not, who do you trust? Who knows the Lord really well?
Yeah.
Surround yourself with those people, lean into them. And one tip for keeping going for the long term, don't just surround yourself with those that agree with you. Surround yourself with those that are hungry for what you're hungry for.
Wow.
Because that keeps you going. Otherwise, you can have loads of people that agree, but the fire goes out. Who's hungry for what you're hungry for? Surround yourself with those people and drive each other forward.
So good. So when you're in that process, and I get that, how about with your friends or people that know you outside of the church or outside of Christianity? What are they thinking at this point, which is you're coming into this process of taking a role now? How do you expect them to react? Do they know you as someone that's this church guy or someone that's like, don't want to associate with you? How's Gavin with non-Christians?
Do you know what? I'm really good with non-Christians now, but the first moment then was tricky. Because I was like Jack the Lad. I was captain of all the sports teams. I was the one causing the chaos, starting the fun, pushing the boundaries. And then suddenly I become a Christian. Now, within the pool of spittle that's the UK evangelical world, I was known as a Calver in a family that was kind of course they'll become a Christian. But actually to my mates who didn't think anything of that, I was the life and soul of the party. Suddenly he's become a Christian. What's happened? They all thought I'd gone nuts, thought I'd been brainwashed. And I was going to uni, and one of the reasons I was going to that uni was they had a good football team, and I'd probably play for the first and do this. And I hadn't given up on, say, semi-professional football and various stuff, all these things going on. And yet suddenly then I'm going to Bible college. I mean, they thought it was a joke. But most of my friends didn't know there were such things. And so I had to process that a bit with friends, and that was difficult. I lost some friendships, actually, because of misunderstanding. But it was really good for me, too. And I've been determined throughout my life, do not just surround yourself with Christians. Otherwise, what are you doing? You know, whenever someone says, if you want to invite someone to church for X, you've got to have people you can invite to church. You've got to be in those relationships. But those first years was difficult. That the change moment was difficult because I was a new creation. I was transformed. I was using the same passion that I'd been used wrongly. I was using it rightly then. But to the people I journeyed with before, some of them felt let down. Some of them felt like, well, we're in this sort of adventure of fun together, and now you're different. And I think sometimes it's easier when you start friendships with non-Christians and you are a Christian, because that's there from the start, isn't it? But when you're in those relationships and your whole behavior, value system, and subservience to Jesus transforms everything, that makes it quite difficult for the friends around you. And I'm really grateful that I met my wife when we were both completely following Jesus and those sort of things, because it's difficult.
Yeah. So let's talk about family now. And I think that's a great segue. So married, children, and obviously we know you as well. You've been very open about your issues in the past as well, which is important. So can you just share more about sort of, you know, some of the key moments in your personal life in terms of how faith has really helped you to overcome challenges whilst in that season that you was in?
Yeah, and family's great. I mean, Anne and I have been married for 24 years. They always say that couples that pray together stay together, and I think that's true, but also couples that laugh together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think prayer and laughter are the two sort of oxygens of our marriage, and we're really happy. That's really great. Works really well. It's a cross-cultural marriage because I'm a Cockney and she's she's plastic Scouser from the Wirral. So, you know, we have to get over that. But that's great. That's really lovely. And a few years into our marriage, she wanted to have children and I didn't disagree. And that started quite a painful journey when it just didn't happen. And we went through all those tests and everything else. And I remember feeling sorry for Anne because she must have a fertility issue. You know, classic young man, innit? Biggest weakness is an unawareness of any weaknesses. But it turns out it was me. Anne was fine. And I actually couldn't have kids. And that was quite a challenge, especially as the week I was told that by a doctor, a 14-year-old in our youth group announced she was pregnant. That was quite an interesting time. But then about 9 months after that, we had our first child. Miraculous. You know, Saviour, he can move the mountains. Let's not be too flippant, but he can also impregnate women from sterile men if he wants to. You know, God is a God of miracles. So our Amelie's a miracle. And then about 18 months after that, Anne got pregnant again. And it was like, man, wow. I mean, God's healed me. You know, I go to conferences, they say fertility issues, come to the front, get prayed for. You're up there getting prayed for, you know. Maybe I've been healed. And I remember going for a routine scan further on, and we went for it. And just to help any guys listening to this that haven't had kids, when you go to the scan, even though it looks like the combination between a sultana and a mushroom and you can't really see it, just pretend you can and pretend it's cute. Makes life a lot easier. So I'm there pretending it's cute, and the midwife's face really changes, and she turns to us and says, "Reverend and Mrs. Calver, I'm so sorry. There's no noise because your baby's not got a heartbeat. It's died in the womb." And I remember in this moment thinking, I can deal with miracle babies and I can deal with no babies, but I can't deal with this. And in that very moment, I felt, Lord, what are you doing? My daughter, Amelie, who was 18 months, came and hugged me on the leg. And I felt God speak to me as clearly as he's ever spoken to me. Do not be ungrateful for that which you don't have.
Wow.
But be grateful for that which you do.
How do you hear that voice?
It was almost audible.
Right. Describe that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm there. My daughter's holding my leg. My tears are flowing down my face. And I'm hearing in my ear, do not be ungrateful for that which you don't have, but be grateful for that which you do. And be faithful to me as I've been faithful to you. And do you know what? In our journey with kids, that's not even half time, but that was the pain to that point.
Right. That's so powerful, because one can say, in the midst of what just that news came about, then hearing the voice of God at that moment, you kind of think, I don't want to hear it. I'm distraught. I'm upset. So having that voice encouraging you in that time, you know, it's so helpful in a sense. It's giving you the peace. Was there a time when you're thinking, which is, I'm sick and tired of God now, why are you doing this with me? Like the why question that normally would traditionally happen.
Yeah, sort of. I think non-Christians ask, why does God allow suffering? I think Christians should ask, where is God in the suffering? And my experience in those few years was he was holding my hand. Because it really continued, because actually after that, 2 years later, Anne gets pregnant again. By this point, fine, I must have been healed, right? We go for scan. And you go for a scan at 18 weeks. Now, by the way, I don't want to be too crass, so forgive me if this isn't appropriate for this podcast. Right? I was told that it was physically impossible for me to have a boy. There was an outside chance of having a girl. Because when you've got really low sort of sperm count, you've got problems there. It may surprise you to know, the male sperm go 5 times as fast and die off quickly. The female sperm lasts 5 times as long. They ask for directions. They persevere. They work out the way forward. Isn't this strange? And so it was impossible for me to have a boy. We go for the scan at 18 weeks. It's clearly a boy from what we're seeing on the scan. So for a start, it's like, I must have been healed. But then secondly, you've got a problem when you have 2 medics and it ends up with 24 in the room. They've all come in to have a look at something they've never seen. There's all kinds of fluid around all my son's organs. He's really sick. They tell us in no uncertain terms he's going to have a blood transfusion in the womb at 18 weeks. That's about that big. In the womb at 18 weeks. We're told there's a 5% chance of survival. Cambridge University want to study us. This happens to 1 or 2 women a year in the UK. So we're signing away our lives and all this is going on. And you're like, what's happening? I've just realised I could have a miracle son, and now I'm realising he's going to die. And what goes on? And so the next day we go in for the blood transfusion in the womb. Happens to be New Year's Eve as well, which adds to the drama of it all. There's 2 donors on the blood list in the UK with the right blood for this. Oh, it's so rare. They put a needle into my wife's stomach, into the baby's stomach. The baby's too small to get a vein. Take out half the baby's blood and replace it with the new blood in the transfusion. The risk is heart attack. The baby's too small to take this. So they say to us, there's no cure, there's just intervention. Because we've got these antibodies that are really rare. Everyone always says, what about the injection? No, that's for anti-D, that's really common. We've got these really rare antibodies, my wife and I. And they say to us, there's only intervention. Now your wife needs to sleep for 3 hours and then we'll scan. And if the baby's moving, we fight another day. But expect the baby not to be moving, then sadly it's over. I sat by Anne's bed. She's sleeping. I felt compelled to pray a prayer out loud. I said out loud, Lord Jesus, if this baby lives, you're good. If this baby dies, you're still good.
Wow.
Tomorrow morning, I will get up regardless and say you are good. A few hours later, they scan, baby's moving. We can fight another day.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah.
How was your wife at this time? It's very tough.
Yeah.
Right, from a male perspective, it's we think with our heads first normally, but from your wife perspective, I'm sure there was a lot going on emotionally, even spiritually, I'm sure. How is that? Just for maybe there could be some females listening here that similarly have gone through a similar process. How was that navigated and how did you overcome that? And what was the support like, if you don't mind sharing?
I think the hardest thing for Anne was that her body was literally fighting her baby. Right. Because the thing with the antibodies is there has to be some kind of internal bleed that then makes your system says there's something wrong. So so her body was fighting the baby that she actually was wanting to nurture. That was really difficult. I think for both of us, we encountered Jesus profoundly in that season. We both led more people to Jesus than normal in that season too. Because when you can cling to anything in the midst of such pain, people are drawn to that. But it was really difficult. She was in hospital every couple of days for a blood test and a scan, and every 10 days for a blood transfusion. I mean, we will never moan about paying taxes. I mean, but God was still good. We happened to live 6 miles from the Birmingham Women's Hospital at that point, which is the only place in the UK that could do these at that point. So there were blessings within it. But being realistic, we had 9 of these transfusions in the womb. Each time I prayed that same prayer. Each time we clung to hope. Local church really supported us. They did everything they possibly could, which was amazing. And then at 30 weeks, they said to us, better out than in. Now, in the context of pregnancy, 30 weeks is really early, but with what we'd been facing, it literally was better out than in. So they said, we're going to deliver your baby today because it's safer to be outside the womb than inside, because your blood replaces itself every 3 to 6 months once you're outside the womb. Yeah. So then the transfusions wouldn't be needed forever. So they're going to do this C-section, and they lift our baby out, our little baby. We're not allowed to touch the baby. They're going to just show it to us and then straight off to an incubator. But they lift our baby out, and then there's a moment of drama. In the moment that they lift our baby out of the room to show us, he wheezes in the face of the person who's delivered him. 2 things happen. Anne's embarrassed, I think, clearly my son. Then they take him off, incubator for a while, still a battle to be fought. But in the end, he's absolutely fine. My son now is 15 years old. He's 6'4". He's a really good goalkeeper. But do you know what? If he had gone to be with Jesus at that point, God was still good. And that prayer remains true. We have got to get to a point where our faith is not a vending machine. If I get this, then I will love you, Jesus. No. God is good. God is good. Yeah. We have a load of mess to navigate in the midst of that. But for both Anne and I, and particularly Anne, the constant message was, look higher. Yeah. Look higher to Jesus. Look upwards. And also, let's be realistic and say, we are in pain, but God is good. Yeah. If more Christians than ever before asked us in that time, does this make you question God? Yeah. And our answer was always the same. If life is pants and God isn't real, I just lost twice. We don't want to lose twice. Life is absolutely awful, but God is still good.
Yeah.
And we will navigate that somehow.
Wow. Just taking that for a moment and stepping back, with such emotional, yet it's almost distraughtful as well, process to go through, but you're remaining standing on the faith. And there are many out there. I've certainly encountered them as well. I'm sure absolutely you have, where it's I'm mad at God because he allowed certain things to happen in my life. And obviously what you've just described counteracts that from a different perspective. What's the general consensus from your side that you would say to someone who is mad at God, gone through some trauma, some issues, some abuse, a number of things, and blaming God for that, rather than, you know what, I'm still going to bless you no matter what? How do you approach that? What's your advice that you would share to that type of person?
I think firstly, if I actually knew that type of person, we'd be praying, we'd be ministering, we'd be asking for the Prince of Peace to meet with them powerfully. But I think not just the person, but the church generally needs to consider our approach to suffering. So I don't see too many Christians praising Jesus for the promotion they've just got, or praising Jesus for the fact their body isn't broken in the last year. Or when it goes well, we don't think about the Lord. And when it goes wrong, isn't God being bad to us? It's almost like, for me, everything is the Lord's. And we can't get away from the fact that we're in a broken situation. I do think there's some almost prosperity-like teaching around health creeping in, when actually Revelation's quite clear. There's a day coming when there's no more tears, no more pain, no more difficulty. We're not in that day. So my prayer for everyone would be that in the midst of their pain, the Lord would meet them. Because it's not the pain is unavoidable in a broken world, and that's an 8 podcast series on its own, isn't it? Broken world. Why does God allow suffering? But suffering is inevitable. But what is not inevitable is leaning out from Jesus, not leaning in the midst of the suffering. What I have learned is clinging on to Jesus when I'm in pain is the only way to navigate pain. There's no other way to navigate pain. But it doesn't mean the pain's not there. But I'm looking forward to the day with no tears, no difficulty, no hardship. But I think we need a more well-rounded approach that actually says, Lord, I trust you. You're with me in all things. I love you and I need you. Therefore, in all things, you are King. And I've had to get to a point where I say, in the pain and in the difficulty, Lord, I don't have the answers. But this isn't the showstopper. I think this is the other problem is, for some people, one thing goes wrong, but they lose their faith. I don't understand. Actually, in the midst of it, I can say to the Lord, I've got questions, I've got difficulties, I'm struggling. And I'm very real with the Lord. I was very real with the Lord just 3 weeks ago at the Evangelical Alliance. We had an awful week. In Parliament, they decriminalised abortion and approved assisted dying in the same week. That was an awful week for the Evangelical Alliance. I went for a walk with the Lord, I got cross. I said, what are we doing? It's so hard. By the end of the walk, I was okay. It's okay to vent, but it's actually meet the Lord, be subservient to the Lord and journey with the Lord.
So good.
And don't fight him long enough that he takes your hip out of its socket. Fight him, wrestle a little bit. But at some point say, I trust you, Lord, therefore we'll keep going.
Wow. It's such a timely message. That's a message in itself, which is to trust him in the midst of it. We can vent, we can share, we're humans. But the spiritual side, we still believe in his promises. We still believe in the foundation of the principles of we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Yeah, totally. And do you know what? Let's be clear. The Lord never promised it be easy.
Yeah.
The most common promise in Scripture in the Old Testament and New Testament is the same. God says to his people, I am with you. So the promise isn't that it will be perfect. It's the promise that it will be with you. And we don't like chapters like James 1 where it talks about considering it pure joy when troubles come. I think that's quite hard to consider it joy, but let's seek to try and be joyful in the pain. And I think we need to remember the promises of God never return empty. Yeah. But this life is contested.
Yeah. So during this time, and where are you then in your role? Are you now maturing into your role? Was this at the start of the role this situation was going through? And tell us also then how you're managing that role whilst this is going on, because work needs to go on, family is important, balancing the two. Yeah, that's the topic.
Yeah, it's really hard, and the timing was awful. I'd been at Youth for Christ by that point for 8 years, and I was in my first year as the leader of Youth for Christ. I took over leading Youth for Christ really young. I was only 29, which is really young to lead probably the biggest youth organisation at that point. And so I was learning how to be a CEO for the first time, whilst also facing this in my family. Now, that was unbearable. And do you know what? there's no textbook answer as to how we got through. We clung on to Jesus, took one day at a time. One of the approaches I always take to leadership is make stuff bite size. If you approach your day with all the challenges of your day, it's overwhelming. If you chop it up into manageable bite-sized chunks, you can do one of those. So what I would do is make sure, okay, the challenge for this morning is to do X and Y, or the challenge this evening is to preach at this youth event, or the challenge this afternoon is to meet this funder. But I wouldn't actually, during that season, it was so intense, I couldn't do a whole day and say, I take that whole day on its own at this point. Because in the middle of the day, Anne might have had a scan or a transfusion, so you had to cut it up into chunks. I think too many of us make our challenges like one great lump, and then it's impossible to see how you navigate it. What we need to do is say, well, actually, no, for now, I just get this bit done, then I'm closer to there, and I get this bit done, and I'm closer to there. The other thing I did was I was vulnerable enough with my team. I don't think leaders are vulnerable enough.
Explain that,
sorry. Okay, I shared with my team as soon as I knew, like my senior team, as soon as I knew the level of medical reality, I shared that with them. Yeah. And I said, guys and ladies, I need you to know there's a chance I might respond more emotionally at the moment. There's a chance my judgment won't be as good as normal. There's a chance my availability won't be the same. What I need some of you guys to do is step up. And who's going to be, I said, because we have different positions, and I might often be Moses, have Aaron and her holding my arms up. But right now, I feel like Joshua. I'm fighting a battle there on behalf of my family. So who's going to be praying, and who's going to be holding up arms, and who's going to be supporting? How are we going to lean in and do this together? Because I think too many CEOs make themselves an island, and they feel like they have to be poker-faced about their pain. But actually, let's lead in reality. And the other problem I have is, if I'm honest, is many people have said to me over the years, my face has subtitles. So I can't pretend that I'm loving life if I'm actually in pain. You've got to be realistic. But I think anyone listening to this, I'd say, break it up into manageable chunks so that you're not thinking you're not achieving anything. Get some stuff done. But lean into your team. Have good people around you and let other people help you, because that also grows them. Some leaders at Youth for Christ at that point are now doing stuff they would never have been doing if I hadn't have effectively outsourced some of what I had to do in order to get through that season.
Wow. And that was one of the things I was going to ask about. Sort of, what are some of the frameworks, some of the methodologies, some of the tips and tricks on, as a Christian and as a CEO running an organizations, on what's a great way to be effective without compromising the faith?
Yeah.
Because you may have opportunities, you have conversations where you think, I can't deal with this person, and I feel like, which is, I'm going to throw a chair at the person.
Yeah.
Or I need to take a step back and read my Bible.
Yeah.
And get a promise shared to me to control my composure. What are some of the frameworks that you've learned? And one of them, as you just mentioned, but really has helped you to become a more of effective CEO as a Christian, but maintaining that professionalism as well as your faith professionalism.
Yeah. A few things, not in order, but a few things. Strength Finder's been really helpful to me. I don't know if people have come across this. Now Discover Your Strengths is Marcus Buckingham's book. And what it does is it tells you what your 5 top strengths are, but you can also do that for all your team. And then you learn how to manage and grow people, how they want to be done, not how you want to do it. So learning how other people tick has been a massive thing. I think another thing that's been absolutely huge to me is never over sweat the small stuff. So try and see it for what it is. Try and not overstate it. Don't get too overexcited about stuff that actually in a year's time won't really matter. We can get through this. I think as a Christian as well, prayer is an amazing weapon in your armory. Yeah, I'm amazed how many Christian leaders don't bother to ask the Lord what he thinks in a certain situation, or even arrow prayers. I've been in moments where I've been contending for the gospel or doing advocacy with politicians, and my favorite prayer is, Lord, help. And suddenly, actually, the Spirit will reveal stuff that you need. One of the things for me as a Christian leader that matters most is not my competency, but my surrender to Jesus.
Wow.
So do I know Jesus better than I did 6 months ago? If the answer to that is no, I've got a problem. So the most important thing in measuring my leadership is my servanthood as a child of God. Do I know the Lord better? Am I going deeper? I don't want to overestimate my activities and underestimate my prayers. Then the final thing I'd say is know your shadow side. So your strengths have a shadow side. So all of your strengths can be misused. And once you know your shadow side, you know how to tame it a little bit. Gentleness in the Bible is a fruit of the Spirit. It's actually power under control. It's not lack of power. So allow yourself to be gentle by knowing your shadow side. So for me, I'm a communicator. That means if I want to, I can probably destroy someone with my words. I can put someone down. I'm quick with my words and my tongue, and I'm good at that. I've got to know that the strength of that in communicating is great, but the shadow of that and what that can do to someone who might not be as quick or might not be as erudite or might not be as articulate, that's not fair. So I have to tame the shadow side. So you talk about throwing a chair at someone, that would be the shadow side of being passionate, would be that you'd then be quite assertive when you got across. Well, don't lose the passion, but tame the shadow. So tame the shadow, bring the shadow to the Lord, go deeper in prayer, and know what makes other people tick and how they work, and you can move forward in a different way.
Was there any point in that time as sort of this young leader coming in now, running this organization, some challenges that we said, you know what, I would have learned from that better now? Or what? Give us an example if there's a scenario that you would come across where, you know what, that was a great learning experience for me and it really built me, my character and my leadership.
I think I look back and I'm embarrassed about lots of things, but I'm also kind to myself about the decisions I made at that time because I made the best with what I knew. So I was too quick to make certain decisions on certain people and their capability. I was too judgmental on other people's capacity. I think this is an important one. I'm the Duracell bunny, right? I can outdo anyone for energy. As a young person, I thought that was kind of linked to effectiveness. It's not. It's just the constitution I've been given. And I think also, I just look back and think, why didn't I dig deeper wells of wisdom from other people's journeys? So I'm like a ministry magpie now. Right? I want to talk to anyone about their experiences. And you can get wise one of two ways. You live a long time or you steal the wisdom. And I'm going to live a long time, but I'm also going to steal wisdom on the way. So I'd have stolen more wisdom earlier on. And then even silly things, like a practical thing, right? When I took it over at 29, being a CEO, I started dressing like my dad. And I'm like, what am I doing this for? Because it's almost like to be a CEO, you need to almost not look 29. You need to do. And after a few years, I was like, stop being silly. You set the culture. You don't have to be following another one. So I think I try and be safer and more secure in my own skin, which I definitely am now. But the great thing about Youth for Christ is Youth for Christ is a factory for leaders. So they give you opportunities and they let you grow. And it's produced, I mean, even within a Christian world. Graham Kendrick first led worship when he worked for Youth for Christ. J. John first preached when he worked for Youth for Christ. You know, and so for me, it was a wonderful place to learn in an environment where it was okay to make mistakes. Because here's the other thing is, I look back and there's loads of change. But I also look back and think, I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't gone through that stuff. And the most important thing along the way has been mentors and constant learning. So assessing, looking back, feeding back. If you use the same tactics now you used 10 years ago, then you're a fool. But in that point, you learn stuff through it. So in some ways, trust the process.
Fantastic. Now tell us about how then that transition came into then Evangelical Alliance. How did that come about? Was it because from history and lineage, you know about it? Just describe that.
Just to be clear, first of all, it's not Simba in The Lion King being promised to the EA at birth. It certainly isn't that. It certainly isn't. And the EA was not on my bucket list, just to be clear, partly because of the family history. But after being at YFC a while, I've been there 14 years. I loved Youth for Christ, by the way. Just loved it. I mean, everyone thinks Youth for Christ is a good idea. Even non-Christians think it's a good idea. Stopping those naughty young people from being naughty. They don't mind it. It's because they've become Christians. But, you know, we used to work in prisons and the Justice Secretary loved what we did. And, yeah, it was great. I loved it. It's probably the best job I'd ever have in terms of just freedom and joy. But the Lord became quite clear. Talked about outside confirmation. 2 or 3 prophetic words happened in different places I was speaking where someone would say, the Lord wants to stretch your area of influence. Then there's not just young people in heaven. He's going to grow you into a role where you share the gospel across all generations. Those kind of things. Happened 2 or 3 times. And to be honest, I ignored it because I liked what I was doing. Then my wife and I were at something and it happened again. And she said, wow, that's amazing. So clear. Sounds like you're going to need to leave Youth for Christ. Wow, this is incredible. God's really speaking. Has anything like this happened before? And at that point, I had to confess to 2 or 3 other times. Got in trouble. And then it just became clear the Lord was sort of unstitching me from where I'd become safe, I think. Then I met with the leader of the Evangelical Alliance and they had a role for Director of Mission and Evangelism at the time. And it was, honestly, all the good news, no bad news. What a great job. And further sort of counsel from others and those words, it all kind of fitted together. And I went to the EA, not as the CEO. I went to the EA as one of the directors. And actually that was quite nice. All the exposure, no pressure. And then 4.5 years later, CEO steps down. I kind of knew that I needed to go for that. But the challenging thing with this role now is because it's all the political advocacy too. It's all the bad news as well as the good news. So my last job was more fun, but EA is great because we're good news people in a bad news world, and it's effectively a gospel alliance, and we're working with all these churches, all these organizations to try and make Jesus known. It's exactly what I was born for. You know, when you know you're in your lane, this is the lane I was supposed to run in, but it's really hard to.
Describe day one of taking that role then.
Well, day one was fun because that was like a celebration where all kinds of people came together to commission me. I think the really hard bit was about month 3 because that was the start of the pandemic. So my predecessor's got perfect timing. He left and all looked good. Then suddenly there's COVID. Suddenly there's all these things. Suddenly I'm running a 180-year-old startup because you can make quick decisions, but you've also got to make good decisions. And it's been that was crazy.
Yeah. Has there been a time as at the EA where we talk about the good stuff, which is fantastic and it's much needed, but describe one time when you really felt that your faith was challenged and a scenario where it can just encourage someone, because being in that role, being in that position, accountability, you know, you're leading a great organization, people are depending on you as well. Is there been a time where you just had that moment of, this is really challenging now?
Yeah. I had a 3-month period that I don't know how I breathed in and out. It was so hard. It was so difficult. There were a number of things going on in the wider church, because within our membership, if things go wrong, that comes to us. There was a moral failure of a really close friend. And who I had to remove. There was some other things that were just really difficult. It's a really, really hard time. It was just after the pandemic and things weren't working. And all these things were going on. I was like, I just can't cope with anymore. And there was a death of a close friend. Just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I thought I was at the end of the list of what could go wrong until Easter Sunday. A cyber attack took place on the EA that wiped out everything. So we came in after Easter, nothing worked. Everything was, and that's a huge deal to an organisation like ours. I mean, you're talking so many bits of information. It's just an absolute mess. And I thought I was going to have to start the EA again. I thought I was going to have to do a Facebook message out. Who wants to join? Because we haven't got any members anymore. Yeah, it was catastrophic. And a deep dive was done into that. We know that someone did that against us. We don't know who. We're not going to get paranoid. But all of this pressure. And I went for a walk with the Lord on a beach, and I said, I'm done. I'm just a Southeast London boy that wants to tell people about Jesus. I'm not in it for this. This is too much. It's too hard. And I don't want to be responsible when other people mess up and have to deal with it. And I don't want to fix a cyber attack. And I feel like there's pressure from every side. I'm treasure in a jar of clay. I felt that so profoundly. And I just felt the Lord sort of almost saying to me, you're not done. You're nowhere near done. We're just getting going.
How did that happen? Because you kind of get to that moment, and I've been through that walk similarly, where pressure, you know, activities, work, and so forth, and you're like, Lord, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, you're either going to do, I need a revelation, I need someone to talk to me, I need someone to call me, or just like we said, I need someone just to kind of support me. And in that moment, and that walk on the beach, you know, I keep asking about sort of how you think, because, you know, how do you sense that? Because someone may be thinking like, it never happens to me. You know, I never get that voice, or I can never hear that soft, small, still voice in my heart, you know. So just describe and clarify, which is, how do you decipher that the Lord was telling you, don't give up, don't quit, I'm with you, keep going.
Yeah, it wasn't as audible as we've talked about previously, that's for sure. But all I can say in my own walk, I spend an awful lot of time with Jesus. And so I'm used to being open to listen. Too many people in their walk with Jesus just talk, they don't listen. So we need to be quiet. So I've had my rant on that beach, a proper rant. I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm finished, it's too hard. Then I sat on a rock watching see the waves lapping. And I'm like, Lord, I'm going to be quiet now, because I can't be a monologue, this has to be a conversation. And in the stillness of my heart, an overwhelming sense of the Lord saying to me, not in an audible voice, but just through the fact that I'm used to listening and picking up on Lord's, just a real sense of him reminding me that he is with me, he is for me, and we're not done. And actually, that was quite hard to hear, because I can't think of too many times in my adult life where I've been able to make my own decisions. You just can't think of too many times in these big moments, because actually you follow Jesus, you need to be in that space. And I had this real sense, and I had this real presence from that. And it wasn't what I wanted to hear, which often makes me think it's the Lord more than, if it's exactly what I want to hear, isn't that frightfully convenient? It was the opposite of what I wanted to hear. So I went back to our apartment we were staying in, and I spoke to Anne, and I said, I really think the Lord's saying this. She said, that's funny. She said, I've just been praying for you.
Wow.
And I had an overwhelming sense in my heart that you're not done, that you need to keep going, and we're just getting started. Wow. And so then I'm like, okay. So then I said to my board, if you let me set a 10-year direction, you can't do a plan for 10 years. You can do a plan for a year at best. But if you let me set a direction for a decade, I'll stay for a decade. I felt my response to that needed to be to really lean in and to say to other human beings, I'm in for the long haul, I'm not running away. Because my instinct was to run away. And I partly had to do that for myself too, so that the option was off the table.
Wow.
Because it was so hard. And I think too many leaders don't own quite how hard it is. And no one wants to lead anymore, by the way. Everyone wants to be an influencer. No one wants to lead anything because it's so hard. And in the Christian world, by leading, you used to get the chances to speak, the chances to write books. You don't need any of the leadership for that now. And we're going to have a problem because leadership's so under scrutiny. One complaint blows up and there's nothing in it. And it's hard. Yeah. And I think we need to dig in, lean in and say, it was never easy for Jesus. So why would it be easy for us?
Yeah, so good. And I think you've hit a nail on the head, which is we was talking about this, about leadership and, so important and such needed. Now, tell me where in this generation, and especially for what you've seen from your tenure, if you were to summarize that and let's look at moving forward.
Yeah.
What does Gavin Calver envision as what good looks like from a Christian perspective to move forward? What are some of the things that you want to see, that you've seen before, that you think we need to be more better?
As leaders?
As leaders.
I think leaders need to realize that before you can lead, you have to learn to serve. I think particularly for younger people, this is important because I think some of the digital spaces mean that you suddenly get a platform before you've done some of the character stuff that gets you ready to be a leader. That's fine. We can work that out. But before you can lead, you've got to learn to serve. I love it when Elijah and Elisha, right? Elijah's desperate. He's at the end of himself and he's going to give up in that cave. And then the Lord sends a younger person. But then Elisha has to destroy his plow and his oxen, not so he can't go back, but then he has to go and serve. So until they then go up the mountain, he's serving. So before he leads, he's got to serve. And I think there's no shortcuts for me. So we've got to work on character, competency, those things. I think people have got to love the Lord of the work more than the work of the Lord. I know that's cheesy, but it's really important because a lot of people love working for Jesus. We sacrifice intimacy for activity. And actually as leaders, I mean, I graduated 24 years ago from Bible college. The people that are really still hungry and on fire are the people that keep going on with Jesus. They're not the people that are really gifted. It's that your giftedness and your character come together with your how much you are consecrated and how consecrated are we. I think as well, it's a real challenge to me that the church has invested more in leadership programs, leadership this, leadership that in the last 25 years, and we're probably in a worse state. So actually, I think we probably don't need more programs, but we need more people getting alongside people.
Wow.
So the best thing for me was a guy called Roy Crown, who was at Youth for Christ, took me under his shoulder, worked me hard, served me, let me carry his bags, let me go with him, and taught me stuff. Who am I investing in, and who are they then investing in, and how are we paying it forward?
And that's discipleship, mentorship that comes with it, which is so good, and it is following the framework of that Elijah and Elisha. Fired 3 times before he even got the double portion.
Exactly.
So good. Now, from a perspective of, again, taking a step back, and you're seeing all your members, all the church members, part of the EA, what are some of the things, or maybe 1 or 2 things that comes to your mind from a ministry perspective that ministries can do better in this day and age? We live in a digital age, a social media age, influencer age. What could some of the practicalities that ministry can implement better?
I think the digital front door is really important. I mean, let's not think that people are just turning up at church without checking you out online first. Often people are now checking you out online first. So what's your website like? What's your online service like? Does it do justice to what's going on? Because too often, if you look at what people broadcast, it's literally the preacher at the front. Whereas actually, what's the experience of the room? What's going on? What's happening? I think there's more that can be shown there.
So good.
And I think our social media engagement needs to be better. I mean, Leonard Sweet, who's a theologian I know in the US, says that not using social media now is like not using books for the last 500 years. It's just, you've got to use it. And so I think the digital thing is important. But I also think for us as leaders, we need to not leave any doors open for the enemy to ever go at us. So get your safeguarding policies right. Get your things in place. Get your prayer support right. Get your intercessors right. Make sure that we're ready for what's going on. I honestly believe we're living in the most exciting time in my lifetime to be involved in
Amen.
ministry. The openness to the gospel is like nothing I've seen. People are coming to faith in their droves. I mean, it's incredible time. But as the light shines brighter, so the attack of the darkness is greater. And we just need to make sure we're in a battle here and we are contending for the spiritual health of the UK. And so let's take that seriously. So I think we need to up our prayers. I think we need to do better in the digital space. But also, the biggest pandemic in this nation in the last 10 years has not been COVID, it's loneliness. So let's provide community for people. And in the midst of that community, let's believe that people will meet hope, because hope is a name and his name is Jesus.
Fantastic. Gavin, I think on that note, I'm sure we'll hopefully do a part 2 on this because there's more to be said. But just where you've summarized it, honestly, it's been a fantastic message, great way to end that note. Great encouragement for the body of Christ, but not just from Christianity perspective, but for people to really get to know you. And I know we've just scratched the surface. There's more to it. I really want to just come to that point now, which we come to this place of 7 quick rapid fire questions and getting to know you. 7 being the number of completion.
Of course.
You know, let's do that. And I want to really just get some 7 quick rapid fire questions from you, Gavin.
Great.
Ready?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Prayer in routine or real time?
Routine.
What's your favorite takeaway?
Curry.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
One thing that nobody knows about you?
I was born with a funny foot and went to school a year late because I wasn't academically up to it.
Which Bible character do you relate the most with?
Paul, Ansel.
How do you unwind after a really hard day?
I go for a run.
And what is the Gavin Calver traditional quote?
He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose.
Fantastic.
Jim Elliot. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means that you give up everything you have for the purposes of Jesus.
Fantastic. Gavin, look, honestly, it's been a pleasure to have you on Faith Off the Record. That's what it is. Faith coming off the record, showing people about your faith, but also getting to know you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being a fantastic guest. And I know that absolutely God is doing something really fantastic in your life, in the ministry's life.
Yeah.
And I just pray as well for more people to be known to Jesus through your endeavors and the EA's endeavors and anything else that you're also doing involved with. So thank you again very much, Gavin, for your time.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless.